Hi friends. Today we embark on another captivating journey into the shadowy world of true crime stories. Get ready to investigate, discover, and reveal the secrets of a dark and dramatic case. Are you prepared to dive into this thrilling investigation? Let's begin now. The Blackwood Mansion is located in the heart of the area, representing the American dream from the outside. The Blackwood family is considered the ideal model of a perfect family. Terrence Blackwood, a distinguished man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, has built a small empire in real estate development. His wife, Lorelei, a former model, remains graceful and seductive over the years. Terrence's biological daughter from his first marriage, Ivy, is a smart and ambitious college student. Meanwhile, Callum Reeves, Lorelei's son from a previous marriage, has just graduated and is on the verge of starting his career. In the eyes of neighbors and friends, the Blackwood family represents success, unity, and second chances. Terrence and Lorelei's romance was a whirlwind of love, and their marriage became a hot topic of discussion in Maple Grove. Their children integrated into their new family without difficulty, demonstrating their excellent parenting abilities. However, underneath the happy family image are hidden tensions and secrets that flow deep within the mansion's walls. Whispers of unspoken truths, forbidden desires, and simmering resentments exist, creating a heavy atmosphere. Suburban Terrence Blackwood's journey to the pinnacle of success began from a humble background. Born into a working-class family in Pittsburgh, he climbed the socioeconomic ladder through determination and the ability to spot lucrative real estate opportunities. By his mid-30s, Terrence had founded a company and reshaped the skylines of several mid-sized cities in Pennsylvania. His first marriage to Elizabeth, a college sweetheart, was a partnership of equals. Together they overcome the challenges of building a business and raising their daughter Ivy. However, their lives were turned upside down when Elizabeth suddenly died of an aneurysm when Ivy was just 12 years old. Since then, Terrence has become a widower, forcing him to balance his grief with the responsibilities of single fatherhood and an expanding business. For the next 5 years, Terrence devoted himself to work and parenting, hoping to give Ivy a better future. Terrence Blackwood's simple life changes until he meets Lorelei at a charity gala. Lorelei, who has been a model since the age of 16, had an unhappy marriage with photographer Julian Reeves, which led to divorce and single motherhood to her son Callum. When Terrence and Lorelei come together, they both find a second chance at happiness. Their courtship quickly turned into a lavish wedding, marking the beginning of the new Blackwood family. Ivy Blackwood, Terrence's 20-year-old daughter, is studying psychology and has difficulty accepting her father's remarriage. Although skeptical, Ivy is more open to Lorelei's sincere attempts at connection and her brother's presence, opening the door for the family relationship to grow. Callum Reeves, 22 years old and a recent business graduate, views his mother Lorelei's marriage to Terrence Blackwood with a pragmatic eye. He appreciated the stability and opportunity the Blackwood family provided, but also harbored ambitions to forge his own path in business. With his adaptability, Callum easily plays the role of stepson and older brother in the new family. As the Blackwood family settled into their new life, they were considered pillars of the community, often organizing charity events and participating in local politics. Ivy and Callum become the pride of the family, seen as examples of their success. However, behind closed doors, the family's balance is precarious. Unspoken desires, hidden resentments, and the weight of expectations create a tense atmosphere, ripe for upheaval. On July 15, 2023, dawn in Maple Grove was bright but oppressive. The Blackwood family begins an ordinary morning, unaware that the night will bring irreversible changes. Terrence woke up with his mind full of plans for an important meeting with investors in the afternoon, potentially ushering in Blackwood Development's most ambitious project yet. As he told himself about the day's program, Lorelei entered the bathroom wearing a light silk robe. She asked about dinner plans and suggested trying a new Italian place in town. Terrence saw his image in the mirror and frowned slightly as he replied to Lorelei that he was not sure when he would return from the meeting and asked her not to wait. Although Lorelei's smile faltered, she quickly recovered and maintained a calm appearance. Ivy sat hunched over her bowl of cereal, eyes glued to her phone, and didn't look up to greet her dad when he walked into the kitchen. Callum left early for an internship at a marketing company. As Terrence packed his briefcase and keys, he kissed Lorelei goodbye before driving away. The day passes peacefully with Ivy working at the library and Lorelei preparing for the charity event. But just after 3 p.m., Terrence's car suddenly returned. The meeting ended early, which was rare, leaving him with mixed feelings of victory and defeat, worried that the deal was finalized faster than expected. When he entered the house, he noticed an unusual silence because Lorelei was no longer home. Terrence decided to relax before telling his family the good news. As he climbed the stairs, sounds from Ivy's room caught his attention, whispering and nervous laughter. His hand moved to the doorknob, opening it in the blink of an eye, feeling nervous about what might be going on inside. Part of Terrence's mind screamed for him to stop, to preserve the trust between father and daughter, but the feelings of anxiety and anger at the thought of Callum in Ivy's room overrode everything. When the door opened, time seemed to stop as he witnessed the scene. Ivy and Callum were lying on the bed in a state of undress. Shock and rage filled him as their eyes filled with fear and guilt. Ivy and Callum hurriedly pulled on their clothes, but Terrence couldn't control his anger. He pointed at Callum, questioning why the boy dared to enter the house with his daughter. Out of rage, Terrence grabbed Callum's throat, causing them both to fall onto the table, causing books to fall everywhere. Ivy begged her father to stop, but her words could not reach his mind. As Callum tried to resist, his hands frantically searched for something, and finally he stumbled and smashed a crystal ball into his stepfather's head. Blood flowed from the cut on his temple, but his anger only increased. Terrence pinned Callum to the ground. The two struggled in chaos, arms and legs tangled together in rage. Terrence's hand once again tightened around Callum's throat, causing the boy to suffocate and his eyes to bulge from lack of air. Ivy's screams became a blur as Terrence vented his anger at Callum. As Callum's body went limp, the new red mist gradually dissipated from his vision. Horrified by what had just happened, Terrence let go and stepped back, his hands shaking as he stared at his son's motionless body. Callum's death plunges the Blackwood family into a nightmare of guilt and despair. Ivy sobbed between gasps, trembling as she asked to call the police. Terrence interrupted, insisting that this was a terrible accident, but that calling the police would only make things worse. He emphasized that this incident could ruin their lives. although Ivy initially seemed to object. In the end, out of shock and fear, she nodded. The next hours passed in a frenzy as Terrence began to clean up all traces of the struggle. He tore up the blood-stained carpet, rearranged the furniture, and packed incriminating items. Ivy, in a state of shock, mechanically followed her father's instructions. As dusk fell in Maple Grove, Terrence canceled all his appointments for the next few days due to a family emergency. He tried to keep a concerned tone as he asked Lorelai about Callum reporting his disappearance to the local police. When Lorelai returned, she found Terrence and Ivy sitting in the living room with serious looks on their faces. Terrence says that Callum left after an argument about unanswered calls, and Ivy, with red eyes, nods in confirmation. The Blackwood house became a center of concern as friends and neighbors brought stew and words of encouragement. Police officers repeatedly took statements, assuring the family that they were working hard to find Callum. During this time, Terrence kept his stepfather's worried expression, hugged Lorelai, and thanked everyone. Ivy looked at her father with a feeling of skepticism, knowing the truth behind his appearance. As the last guests leave, Terrence pulls Ivy aside and reminds them that they are doing this to protect the family. Ivy, feeling trapped in the nightmare they created, could only nod. Days turned into weeks with no sign of Callum. The initial worry turned to darker speculation. Detective Elias Thorne, a former police officer in charge of the investigation, feels something is wrong and is tormented by Callum's case. When Thorne interviewed Lorelai, her eyes were red, her hands clutching a cup of tea. She talked about the last time she saw her son. Thorne's gaze shifted to Terrence. The man remained calm. Terrence said he and Callum had argued about his son's career plans. He wanted Callum to join the family business, but Callum was determined to pursue his own path. Thorne asks Ivy if she witnessed the argument, but she shakes her head, saying she was working when she got home and Callum had left. Thorne probed gently but persistently, noting the family's reactions: Lorelai's control, Terrence's coldness, and Ivy's withdrawal. These reactions create a complex picture that the detective cannot decipher. In the following days, Thorne and his team investigate Callum's life, interviewing his friends and colleagues as well as his ex-girlfriend. They create a portrait of an ambitious young man with no clear reason for his disappearance. As the investigation progressed, inconsistencies emerged. There were no calls or texts in Callum's phone records on the day of his disappearance, and his car was found parked at the trailhead but yielded no evidence. Any useful evidence? None of Callum's friends corroborate his story about plans to meet on the day he went missing, leaving Detective Thorne feeling the key to the mystery lies in their house. As the weeks turn into months, the Blackwood mansion's facade of normalcy begins to crack under the weight of the secret. Terrence threw himself into work with new enthusiasm, expanding his business, surprising the locals. In contrast, Lorelai's social life withers, while Ivy is haunted by loss and a sense of complicity, withdrawing from friends and studies. Ivy was the first to show signs of psychological collapse. Vivid nightmares and guilt nearly broke her. After a bad dream about Callum, Ivy finds herself holding a glass of water in the kitchen, not hearing Lorelai enter until her stepmother speaks up. Lorelai gently asked about her, making Ivy feel both scared and disgusted. Before she could stop herself, Ivy started confessing everything. Lorelai listened, her face filled with disbelief and eventually devastating understanding. Ivy burst into tears, and Lorelai did the unexpected. She hugged Ivy tightly and whispered that she knew the truth about Callum. They make a pact to confront Terrence and discover the truth about his reaction. During the outburst, Terrence's composure shattered as he raged against their betrayal. His words were a mixture of threats and pleas to be understood, and in this moment of unguarded anger, Detective Thorne arrived for his next interview. He overheard the confession from his car. Over the next few hours, police flooded into the Blackwood residence, secured the scene, and separated family members to question Terrence. When he realized the game was over, Terrence asked for a lawyer. Ivy and Laurel, while unburdened by their confessions, gave full statements when the truth came to light. The Maple Grove community reels after revelations of an illicit relationship between Laurel's siblings and Terrence's deadly outburst, painting a picture of a family torn apart by secrets. Amid the chaos, Detective Thorne focuses on the mission with Terrence's reluctant cooperation. Callum's body is recovered from a hasty grave in remote woods. This discovery brings closure for Lorelei, but also seals the case against Terrence. The case gradually built up based on evidence and testimony as the trial approached new developments. A forensic technician discovers DNA that doesn't match Terrence's profile on Callum's finger, pointing to an unknown male, causing shock to the investigation. Thorne's certainty was shaken when he ordered a review of all the evidence. New inconsistencies emerged, such as the bruises on Callum's neck indicating a left-handed attacker, while Terrence was right-handed. The hairs on Callum's body did not match the hairs from the Blackwood house, leading to the charges against Terrence being dropped. However, the judge decided that the trial would continue based on the confession and circumstantial evidence. Ivy and Lorelei, although initially united, begin to crack under the weight of uncertainty. They wonder if they were too quick to accept Terrence's guilt and blind to his own complicity. As the trial date approaches, everyone grapples with the implications of the truth. The truth is now much more complicated than what people believed. The prosecution and defense prepared to debate the interpretation of increasingly complex evidence, filling the courtroom. When Terrence Blackwood appeared in court, tension rose as he took his oath. The interrogation began with Terrence's answers measured, but his demeanor changed when the defense attorney mentioned new DNA evidence. Terrence's composure shattered as he looked toward Ivy in the courtroom. In that moment, he began to confess, not as everyone expected. Terrence claims that he did not kill Callum, but was responsible for his death. He describes his anger and reveals that it was Ivy who acted frantically to protect her lover and their secret. Terrence recalls that when he walked into the room and saw Ivy and Callum, he was angry. However, before he could react, Ivy used a crystal ball to hit Callum several times. Terrence pulled Ivy out, but it was too late. In a panic, he tries to protect his daughter, mistakenly staging the scene and asking Ivy to clean up, believing they can get through the investigation. He didn't expect things would go this far. When these words rang out, all eyes turned to Ivy. Her face was pale, her body stiff with shock, and when the judge asked for her opinion, she could only whisper and confirm that it was true. In the courtroom, Lorelei broke down sobbing, feeling the weight of her family's devastation more than she could bear. Detective Thorne realizes his case is falling apart, but also feels his instincts are vindicated, beginning the process of rebuilding the investigation. As Terrence was led out of the courtroom, there was silence, reflecting the fierce turn of the case. Ivy and Terrence's confession threw the trial into chaos. The judge declared the trial a mistrial, forcing both the prosecution and defense to reassess their strategy in light of new information. Ivy was taken into custody immediately, and her bail hearing is scheduled for next week. The prosecution asked for more time to review the evidence and possibly bring new charges. Ivy's defense team quickly built a case based on temporary insanity and a crime of passion, emphasizing her youth and the shock of the circumstances that led to her actions. They also shed light on the suspicious dynamics within the Blackwood family, allowing the relationship between step-siblings to develop unchecked. The trial took place in a gloomy atmosphere as Ivy, a once vibrant young woman, now turned pale and withdrew in the defendant's area. Her defense team pursued a strategy of proving temporary insanity, inviting expert witnesses to testify about the psychological effects of forbidden love and the fear of discovery. The prosecution painted a different picture, portraying Ivy as a calculating individual who had a lavish relationship and then committed murder, keeping her actions a secret. They emphasized the brutality of the attack and Ivy's participation in key testimony, which later came from Lorelai, who spoke of her suspicions about Ivy and Callum's relationship as well as her remorse about not interfering. Her tearful words appeared to sway some jurors, but alienated others who saw her actions as complicity. After several days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. They concluded that Ivy Blackwood was convicted of second-degree murder, rejecting the insanity defense but acknowledging the unpremeditated nature of the crime. The judge took into account Ivy's age and the unusual circumstances of the case, sentencing her to 18 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 12 years. Terrence Blackwood was convicted of obstruction of justice and filing a false report. The judge, noting the special circumstances in Terrence's eventual confession, sentenced him to 5 years in prison with 2 years suspended. As the Blackwoods were carried out of the courtroom for the last time, Maple Grove began a long process of healing and reflection, grappling with the realization that even in the most seemingly perfect of communities, darkness can still lurk behind closed doors. Please ensure to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell to stay updated on all the intriguing cases in the True Crime Stories series. Be the first to receive updates on dramatic and thrilling crime stories.